Thank you all for joining me. I'm sorry I can't get rid of that glare, but that's okay. So I am going to go ahead and dive right in here. It is about 1 o'clock. Excited to already see some people here. If you have any questions, please pop them in the chat, and I am happy to answer them. This is going to be, I'm hoping this is going to give you a really nice overview of what doing a detox is. And I want to simplify it. I don't want you, when I talk to patients about doing cleanses and detoxes, I think that they easily get overwhelmed by the concept of doing a cleanse or a detox. And I want to simplify it for you guys today. And I want to make it so simple that you will be able to kind of design your own cleanse and your own detox and make it really easy. Refresh my screen here. We've already got a few more people in here. Welcome, everyone. So for those of you joining, if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat, and I'm going to assume you can all hear me. If anyone is willing to pop that in the chat and just say, yes, you can see me and hear me. And I'm going to go ahead and share my slides, and I just want to make sure you guys can see my slides. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Dr. Leila Turner. I am the owner of Living Wellness Medical Center, and I love naturopathic medicine. So as you all know, if you have worked with a naturopathic doctor in the past, they've probably talked to you about doing some sort of a cleanse or a detox. And the whole point to this is that we teach people what kinds of things we are overexposed to, how those toxic burdens affect our physiology and our function, and what we can do to eliminate or reduce those exposures. So I'm hoping that today I make this simple for you guys. So I do have some slides, but I'm going to go through them rather quickly. And then if there's questions at the end, I'm happy to stay and answer those. So I talk about this as being cleansed by design, and I'm hoping all of you will be able to basically design your own cleanse that you're able to do. Most patients really should do a cleanse. I say twice per year. I do a cleanse every January, and I usually try to do one sometime in the summer or the fall. And I vary how intense they are. For example, sometimes I do cut caffeine. I literally go from my 1 to 2 cups of black tea a day to 0. Now, I usually don't go from 2 to 0 immediately. I usually will intentionally wean myself down over about a 5 to 7 day period. But you want to think about what are some of the exposures that you're getting that you really need to limit. Now, a lot of my patients, when I bring up the concept cleanse or detox, they assume I mean a fast. And I don't. And I want to clarify that difference. A fast is where you're doing either a water fast, meaning only drinking water, or a juice fast, or a broth fast, where you're only drinking juice or you're only drinking broth for some extended period of time. You can do a fast for, I would say if you're ever going to fast, you wouldn't want to do it for less than 3 days, because less than 3 days, you're not quite getting the benefits. Now, there's also something called intermittent fasting, and that's a whole other topic. That's where every single day you are extending the hours of the day that you are not eating. So a really common intermittent fast is you finish dinner at 6 p.m. and you start fasting as soon as you're done with dinner at, let's say, 7 p.m. And then you fast from 7 p.m. through the whole night. The next morning you wake up and you don't eat breakfast. You consume water, but you don't do any food or calories or coffee or protein drinks or anything until you break your fast at, let's say, 11 a.m. or noon or 1 p.m. So you're now fasting for an extended period of time. You're fasting for 16 to 18 hours, and then you have a feeding window between noon and 6 p.m. That would be a 6-hour feeding window, or you would have a 8-hour feeding window where you eat from noon until 8 p.m. Now, intermittent fasting also has some benefits. I've actually used this for people trying to lose weight. And it's it's a completely other cool, worthy tool in our toolbox. All of these approaches are just tools in our toolbox. So intermittent fasting is one thing. 3-day water fasts are another. 5-day water fasts or 5-day broth fasts. So there's these different approaches. Fasting to me is much more intense. It's much harder on the body. It is more effective at bringing down inflammation levels. So for my patients that have severe inflammatory problems, rheumatoid arthritis problems, or if they're full-on diabetic, or even if they're pre-diabetic, I will talk to them about doing fasts. But that's not what I'm talking about today. I do recommend that if you're going to do a fast, that you have a physician actually guide you through it. Schedule a visit with your doc, talk through a fast, talk through whether or not that's something that you want to do. But fasting is much more intense. It's much harder to do. And you're literally only doing water fasting, juice fasting, or broth fasting. And you're not consuming any food or calories or protein drinks. You're not consuming supplements. And you're going for an extended period of time where you're not going to consume food. And what that does is it stimulates the body to essentially clean house, and you turn over and you clean out the liver, you clean out everything, but it's much more intense. So those are fasts. I worked at a fasting clinic for about 5 weeks right after I graduated medical school in Northern California, and it was an amazing experience. It was an actual on-site fasting center where people would go. They had a room. They were supervised by physicians. We did vitals on everyone every day. But they're more intense. We had patients have kidney stones. We had a man throw a pulmonary embolism and have a clot happen when he started eating food again. And so again, fasts are much more intense. They are deeper acting. And those are things I recommend that a physician supervises you through. Today, we're going through what a cleanse or a detox is. Now, all of these words kind of mean the same thing. And I'm trying to give some context to the words so that this makes sense to you. So diving now into what does it mean for us to do a cleanse? So a cleanse is a short-term dietary change lasting anywhere from 3 to 21 days. It basically focuses on removing toxins from the body, meaning minimizing our exposure to the toxins that we have control over, and supporting the body's elimination of these toxins through all of what we call the emunctories. The emunctories are the organ systems that help us eliminate these toxins. So that's all a cleanse is it's getting rid of the junk and supporting the body's elimination. This is a pre-health assessment quiz that I will give to patients if they're wanting to do a cleanse with me. And I have people fill this out pre and post cleanse so that they can see the improvements. Oftentimes they'll complete the cleanse and they'll even forget that they had some of these symptoms. And so it's helpful to fill this out pre and post, because when you complete it the second time after the cleanse, it's much more satisfying to look at this list and go, I don't even remember having that itching, or gosh, I kind of forgot about my stuffy nose. Like I haven't had a stuffy nose in 2 weeks. So if you want to take a picture of this slide, this is a really helpful kind of quiz to, again, look at your symptoms pre and post cleanse. So when I teach people about designing their own cleanse, I want them to think about it in terms of layers. The foundation of a cleanse is not some juice that you buy at the store or even the liver supplements that you take. The foundation of a cleanse is about eating clean. It's about reducing exposures to foods that are inflammatory or that are causing some sort of an immune reaction in the gut. So if you wanted to design your own cleanse, if all you wanted to do is just clean up your diet, that is a cleanse. And that is very effective. And depending on how clean you already eat, that's going to depend on how effective the cleanse is at helping you with losing weight, clearing up brain fog, all the symptoms that we talk about. In December, I did a webinar on why should you cleanse. And in that talk, I talked a lot more about all of the exposures that we're exposed to in the environment, and things that will improve after a cleanse. So December's webinar was really more about why should you cleanse. Today's webinar is really more about how do you cleanse. So the layers of the cleanse is, the first thing is to really reduce the exposures. And I'll go through what our most common exposures are. And then you want to do things that fuel the function of the body. We want to support the liver. We want to support the gut. We want to support the kidneys. We want to support movement. And I talk about using hot and cold and movement and skin brushing to stimulate the body. So let's go through this. So reducing our exposures. Number one is food. We eat 3 to 5 times a day. And every single decision of what we put into our body is either fueling our body or it is stressing the body out. And so part of this is just about committing to becoming more conscious and aware of what food you're putting in your body. It's also, I like to say to people, this is also about, I say, meeting new friends, meaning use this as an opportunity to try new foods or to try new things in the grocery store that you haven't tried before. We usually eat about the same 27 foods every single week. If you were to do a diet diary and track everything you've eaten, I guarantee you're eating 90% of the same foods that you ate last week. I know when I go to the grocery store, I literally have 90% of the same items on my grocery shopping list every single week. And the more frequently you're eating a food, the more you run the risk of developing a sensitivity to that food. So I teach people about rotating their foods. I try to rotate my milks. I have a horrible dairy allergy. I get a rash around my lips. It messes up my tummy. So I do not do any cow milk, but I also therefore want to rotate my milks. So what I mean by rotate a milk is I go through an entire carton of cashew milk. And when that's done, I've already bought a carton of oat milk. And then I go through a carton of oat milk. And I kind of alternate between cashew and oat. And then every once in a while, I'll get a carton of coconut milk. And I kind of rotate between those three. I also have a couple of drinks I make. Like I way prefer my protein powders to be more the cashew milk because I don't want it to get too thick. If I use oat milk for my protein drinks, they get a little too thick. However, when I make I have this drink I drink that I'm completely addicted to. It's a coffee alternative with mushrooms and cacao, and it's called Joey. And if anyone is, just Google Joey coffee drink, and it looks like coffee. It tastes kind of like a hot chocolate, kind of like a barley drink. If anyone has had any of those barley drinks, like Inca is an old one, or Pero is another one, but I cannot tolerate caffeine. Caffeine causes anxiety and insomnia for me, so I have to be careful with it. I love it, but I have to limit my intake. So again, using this cleanse is an opportunity to try new foods, try new drinks, try new friends. And then my hopeful goal with these cleanses is I teach people, eat this way for 21 days, and hopefully you'll adopt 20% of the healthy habits that you did in this cleanse. And then those healthy habits stay with you for the rest of your life, and then you're alternating them maybe with other things. So reducing the exposures, and we'll talk about foods. I have a whole chart for you on foods. Another thing to think about are other things that are stressing out your physiology, or other things that are stressing out your psyche or your spirit. Using this as an opportunity. And so before you do a cleanse, I almost encourage you to do a journal entry and to think about, what are you overexposed to? What is there too much of in your life? And what is there not enough of that we maybe want to try to introduce? Doing a cleanse, I don't ever want this to feel like torture for my patients. Many of them have been like, oh, I did a cleanse and I cut coffee and sugar and it was the hardest thing I ever did and I hated it. I'm never doing that again. I feel so sorry for that being their experience, because I don't want that to be their experience. If they are drinking 3 cups of coffee a day going into the cleanse, then I don't want them going cold turkey. We need to wean them out so they don't get a caffeine headache. And then we also really want to encourage them to overall reduce their caffeine intake, maybe not down to nothing, but let's say we reduce it by 75%. And then when they finish the cleanse, they only go back to drinking 30 or 40% compared to what they were drinking prior. So think about, what do you already know you're getting exposed too much to? Digital detox. I am completely addicted to my computer, my phone. I'm always on the screen. I get out in nature and I am constantly trying to balance out my screen time. But just with my patients all day long, I'm on the computer all day long. And then I'm working on my to-do lists at home and I'm doing admin. I'm constantly in front of the screen. And I know that part of it is that I love my job. I love my business. And so I'm a little bit addicted to working on it. But my husband is the complete opposite. His to-do lists are not digital. He uses good old-fashioned paper. And I know I need to practice unplugging from the screen. So whether that's not doing screen time an hour before bed or not doing screen time in the first 30 minutes when you wake up in the morning, I know during the week, I will wake up, I make my tea, and I sit on the couch, and I look over my schedule for the day, and I look over my to-dos, and that is all on a screen. And so when I do my detox in January and in the summer, I commit, and I say it out loud to my husband so he knows I'm committing. For this period of time, I'm going to unplug from the screen. And it really helps when I come back after the cleanse, because I've had usually 21 days, and the duration of the cleanse is up to you. You can pick. My recommendation is nothing less than 2 weeks, because you really need 2 weeks to stimulate enough detoxification from the fat cells and the liver cells. And you're also trying to create new habits. So doing something for 3 days is not going to do much. So I aim for 14 days or 21 days or 30 days. So think about what you need to minimize your exposure to. We've got the foods, maybe some digital detox. I also throw in here relationship detox. Are there any people that you feel are draining your fuel, draining your psychic love? Are there relationships that you need to put on pause? And sometimes I have had to even tell people and say, I'm doing a 30-day detox and I'm trying to minimize my social interactions right now. Please don't take offense. I'm just doing some inward reflection and cleaning. And use this as an opportunity to reflect and maybe take some action on prioritizing your personal boundaries. And then cosmetics. This is another huge area of environmental toxin exposures. December's webinar, I talked a lot about that, and I have some of that in here later, but audit every single thing that you put on your body, your shampoo, your conditioner, your toothpaste, your moisturizers, lubrication, whatever you are exposing your body to, we absorb very easily through our skin. And there's a number of ingredients we really want to avoid. So thinking about fueling your function while you're doing the cleanse, I have a chart for you on the food, but basically we're going to take out the junk, ideally do organic, so you're minimizing your exposure to pesticides. Most people don't get enough protein. Every time I have them do a diet diary and we actually track kind of what their protein, fiber, fat, and carbs look like, most of them are not getting enough protein. If you're particularly trying to lose weight, which a lot of people are trying to lose weight when they do cleanses, that's usually people's goal. You want to figure out how much protein should you eat and really aim to get that much on the cleanse. Now, how you choose, like what sources you choose of protein is important. There's whey protein only if you tolerate dairy. There are animal sources of protein. There's other plant bases of protein like hemp and rice. There's egg sources of protein. There's all these different types of protein, and you do want to ideally get a variety of sources. You don't want to just eat chicken as your source of protein. A lot of people ask, how much protein should I get? There is a wide spectrum of people's advice on this. My general recommendation is about, you want to convert your weight into kilograms. So if you weigh 150 pounds, everybody get out your calculator. I'll help you do this right now. If you weigh 150 pounds, you're going to divide that by 2.2. Divided by 2.2 is 68. So I weigh 68 kilograms. And then you're going to multiply that times 1.2. And that is kind of my protein factor that I use as a 1.2. So I need 81 grams of protein per day. Now, if you are strength training, then instead you're going to want to multiply that times a 1.3. So 150 divided by 2.2, I'm 68 kilograms times a 1.3 is now 88. Now, some people go all the way up to times a 1.5. So 150 divided by 2.2, I'm 68 kilograms times a 1.5. That puts me up to 102 grams of protein a day. So I'm in the somewhere between 80 to 100 grams of protein per day. If you're trying to lose weight, I really recommend aggressively getting higher. Get up to the 1.5 times your kilograms in terms of grams of protein a day. So for me to get 100 grams of protein per day, I'm going to divide that up between my meals. I generally have 3 meals a day, and sometimes I have a snack. If you're planning on using protein powders during your cleanse, most protein powders are in the 20 to 25 grams per scoop range. I will use high protein as a way to increase your basal metabolic rate and help people with losing weight. So I do recommend protein drinks during a cleanse. And then sugar. If there was one thing I would say we need to detox from, it's sugar. If all we did was remove soda and sugar from the American diet, I don't even know if I would still have a job. It literally is the most inflammatory thing I see in people's diets. So cutting out your sugar and overall doing a lower carbohydrate diet through the duration of the cleanse would be ideal. And then what that then means is, well, what are you eating? You're eating high fiber, and most of our vegetables are high fiber. So that's a very basic way of looking at the foundation of the cleanse. Now, when it comes to foods that are kind of like our biggies in terms of inflammatory and immune provocative foods, the 3 big ones is sugar, dairy, and gluten. And if you are a patient of mine, I've probably at one point said, we need to lower sugar, we need to lower gluten, we need to lower dairy, preferably hold on all of it for 21 days or 14 days or 30 days and do a whole month and cut this out. Now, many of you may have heard of something called Whole30. Whole30 is a 30-day cleanse where you can Google it, and all of the guidelines of the cleanse are available online on the website. Whole30 has now blown up and been marketed so much so that you can go to Whole Foods and you can buy things and it'll have a little logo on it that says Whole30 approved. All Whole30 is a cleanse that's taken out a lot of the bad guys. Sugar, Whole30 has gone farther. It's gone a step further and not just avoided gluten. They actually say to avoid all grain. Now, gluten-free is actually easier because you just need to avoid the grains that have gluten. Grain-free means you're now avoiding all of the grains. And I have a list of what the gluten-free grains are. So I'll show that to you in a minute. And then other common offenders are going to be corn, soy, and eggs. Here's the list of gluten-free grains. So we've got amaranth, brown rice, corn, millet, quinoa, wild rice. Now, wild rice is not actually a rice. It's actually a seed. I love wild rice. I will mix wild rice in with when I make so my grain of choice is quinoa. I love quinoa, but I also love rice. Now, rice is a higher glycemic grain. So if I'm wanting to kind of help maintain my weight, I have to be careful of not eating too much rice. Quinoa is a grain that's gluten-free and it's higher in protein. So what I actually love to do is when I make my rice, I always mix it with quinoa. I do about 50-50. I do 50 quinoa and 50 rice. Every once in a while, there's a dish where I just have to have all rice and I just let myself splurge. But for the most part, I'm doing 50-50 quinoa rice. And I also like to put some wild rice in there. It gives it a really good like nutty flavor. And buckwheat. Now, it's counterintuitive because buckwheat has the word wheat in it, and wheat is the grain that has the most amount of gluten in it. Gluten is a protein in wheat. So these are your gluten-free grains, and then from those, you can also make gluten-free flours. So I'm mostly gluten-free, but I bake all the time with rice flour, or there's also some bean flours and nut flours. And there's many pastas now that are completely gluten-free. There's rice pastas. There's even amaranth pastas. Here is the list of avoid foods and allowed foods. And if you want to take a screenshot of that page, that'll also kind of give you the list. And basically what we're doing here is we're cutting out dairy. If you look in the grain category, it says avoid all grain products on the 8-day detox. So this was just a picture I took from one of my detox books. But again, you're going to want to customize this to the person. If grain-free is too hard to do, then just do gluten-free. Just gluten-free is a good approach. Now, one thing to be aware of is just because you're being gluten-free doesn't mean you're necessarily eating a healthy diet. There are a lot of gluten-free products that are full of sugar and they're full of corn. So be aware that if you don't want to avoid one bad guy and substitute it for another bad guy. So don't go from eating a bunch of gluten to a bunch of corn, because if you recall, corn is kind of high on the list. So these are the avoids: avoiding corn, avoiding gluten grains. Examples. So the grains that have gluten are wheat, barley, rye, spelt, and kamut. Potatoes are fairly high glycemic. There's not a lot of nutrients in white potatoes. Sweet potatoes and yams are actually quite high in fiber. So I'm fine with allowing those during a cleanse. And the other grains here listed is to avoid tapioca, rice, buckwheat, millet, quinoa, amaranth, and teff. So the grain category I customize to the person because I want them to really make their own decision about what they want to avoid during this. Protein foods is basically about eating clean proteins. So clean chicken, turkey, lamb, lentils, fish, any of those are allowed. You're wanting to avoid your processed foods. So beef, pork, cold cuts, sausages, any sort of processed meats. Vegetables, all vegetables are allowed unless they're creamed or creamed or canned. All fruit is allowed, but I don't allow fruit juices. And you want to watch the fruit intake. You do not want to do a 21-day cleanse where all you're doing is eating fruit all day. Although fruit is nutrient dense, meaning it has high vitamins and minerals and antioxidants, it's also high in sugar. So I am not a fan when I see people doing these fruit juice detoxes, and all they do is they drink 3 to 5 fruit juices all day long, and then that's it. That's still a massive amount of sugar. Now, you can get these juices where they're made from vegetables. Like, for example, if you were to juice cabbage or cucumbers, those make a huge amount of water. And if you are going to do your own juice, my general recommendation is 80% of the juice should be a vegetable juice and 20% of it can be fruit. And there's tons of recipes, just Google, if you have a juicer and you're actually going to do this, just Google low fruit juicing recipes and you'll come up with tons of recipes. Soups, it just depends on what it's made from. Beverages, it's basically no milk or sugar. All of your fats and oils are allowed. All of your nuts and seeds are allowed, again, as long as they are real oils. So no margarine, no shortening, no commercial salad dressings that have trans fats. I would avoid mayonnaise. Eggs are on the potential allergen list. So if you're doing a plant-based mayonnaise, then that might be okay, but I would avoid mayonnaise that has eggs. Eggs are big for skin conditions. So anytime someone has a skin condition or an allergy, like seasonal allergies or chronic sinusitis or allergic rhinitis or any of those allergic conditions or eczema or psoriasis, I would put eggs on the avoid for 14 to 21 days so that you see how you do without it. And then sweeteners, it's basically no sugar. There are some sweeteners here that they say are allowed, like stevia, which is it's not a sugar. Stevia is allowed. Xylitol is allowed. Maple syrup, as long as there's not a lot. So we talked about avoiding these things. Another thing I like people to do is to use this as an opportunity to try to minimize their stress. And again, part of this has to do with, prior to starting the cleanse, is to reflect and journal and to think about, where are you stressed and what maybe stress reducing habits can you introduce into your routine for 14 or 21 or 30 days that will hopefully help your nervous system moving forward. So this is called the breathing square. And here you inhale for a count of 5, hold your breath for a count of 5, exhale for a count of 5, and then you repeat it. And this, it's called, and there's supposed to be a hold here. So it's inhale, hold, exhale, hold. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. And that breathing square is a wonderful tool for helping to calm down the nervous system. Here's a list of some other common exposures. So to think about, where are you getting your drinking water? Do you have a water filter? Air pollution. Do we need to consider a filter for your house? But to me, this is all kind of cleanse 2.0. The foundation of the cleanse is cleaning up the diet. We eat 3 to 5 times a day. We want to really consciously clean up all of those decisions that we're putting into our body 3 to 5 times a day. Here's some other tips on minimizing exposure. So we talked about water filters, maybe cleaning up any of your household cleaning products. You want to find cleaning products that ideally don't have toxins in them. Method and Seventh Generation are both companies that have pretty clean cleaning solutions. Potentially washing your fruits and vegetables if they're not organic. Being aware of your local water quality, ventilation in your home, and products that don't have those synthetic chemicals. Here's a couple of examples of ways to clean your vegetables if they do have pesticides on them. So you can mix some white vinegar or baking soda or even salt with water, and there's your cleaning solution for cleaning your vegetables. Here are some air filters. These 3 companies here are very good companies. They use HEPA filters, and those filters are really effective at filtering out these toxins. The EPA is the Environmental Protection Agency, and the EWG is the Environmental Working Group. Both of these guys have lots of information on how to avoid toxin exposure. And then the latter part of the cleanse has to do with what can we do to support the body's, we call these the emunctories. The emunctories are the body's elimination organs. So the 4 emunctories are the liver, the skin, the bowels or intestines, and the kidneys. So I go through each of these. So how can we support the skin? So dry skin brushing. If you want, this is recorded and you'll have access to these slides later. And here are instructions for doing dry skin brushing, but I'm going to show you this picture. So this is an example of a skin brush. You could either use a skin brush or you could use like a plant loofah. And the general idea here is that you're going to brush the skin towards the heart. This is not a brush that should hurt. This is a brush that should be invigorating, but not hurt. And you want to do this. I do this in the shower, and you can either do this dry before you get in the shower, or you can do it at the end of the shower. And you can either do it with a dry brush or you can actually do it wet. And the point is that you feel like your skin has been invigorated. You're increasing circulation to the skin. And when you increase circulation to the skin, you're going to increase toxic removal that has built up in your peripheral skin tissue. So we store toxins in our fat. And it's very hard to get those toxins out because they're stuck in there. Few things will mobilize those toxins. Dry skin brushing can help to mobilize them. Lymphatic massage can mobilize them. Sauna can mobilize them. So if you have access to a sauna, I'd recommend doing, a 15 to 30 minute sauna anywhere from 2 to 5 days a week. So what you do with dry skin brushing is you just brush. You just brush towards your heart. You're going to do the inside of your arm, the outside of your arm, and you're always brushing in the direction of your heart. So you're doing your arms and you're doing your legs and you're always brushing towards your heart. And if you have someone you want to help you where you can brush up your back, that's also going to then help the circulation. And this is something you could be doing every single day in the shower, or you could do this when you're doing your shower. Now, alternating hot cold. Imagine the circulatory stimulation you get when you get into an icy bath. We've all probably now heard of these cold plunges. Any way you can do a cold plunge will stimulate circulation and toxic. What you're doing is you're stimulating toxic circulation. So you're essentially mobilizing toxins that have been stored in the peripheral tissues, and you're putting those toxins back into circulation, meaning your bloodstream. You're putting the toxins back into the bloodstream, and then you want to get those toxins back up to the liver and the bowels, where you're going to either pee or poop them out. So alternating hot and cold is a really effective way of stimulating peripheral circulation. So going back and forth from hot or cold is wonderful. Now, you can do this in a really expensive situation like this, where you have a hot bath and a cold bath. If you have a pool, you could hypothetically go from your cold pool this time of year to a hot shower. You generally want to be in the cold for about 3 to 5 minutes. And then you want to go into the hot and be in the hot again for about 3 to 5 minutes. A good example would be hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. Always finish with cold. If there's one thing you remember about hot, cold, all you have to remember is finish with cold. That is the most important thing. Now, you can even accomplish this in the shower this time of year in Arizona with hot and cold showers. Just turn your water cold and stand there as long as you can handle it, 3 to 5 minutes. Now, personally, I hate cold, and I can't handle for more than about 60 seconds. I cannot handle it. And in the beginning, I can't handle it for more than about 10. So start with what you can handle and slowly build up. So maybe it's 8 seconds of cold followed by 30 seconds of hot, 10 seconds of cold followed by 30 seconds hot, 30 seconds of cold followed by 30 seconds of hot. And then because you want to finish with cold, you're going to go back to the cold. But this time, because it's your last one, maybe you only do 10 seconds of a cold flash. So alternating hot cold is a really nice way of mobilizing toxins. An Epsom salt bath. Now, a bath is also a good way to mobilize it. If you can go from a hot bath to a cold shower, hot bath, cold shower, that would be another way to mobilize toxins. And the benefits of Epsom salts is that the Epsom salts, again, increases circulation. Here's kind of the instructions. Basically, it's 3 to 4 cups of Epsom salt in your bathtub. Here are the phases of detoxification in the liver. Now, this is where supplements come into play, because there's a number of supplements that stimulate phase 1, and there's a number of supplements that stimulate phase 2. And you kind of want to think of the liver as the gatekeepers for these toxins. If the liver is not working well, then the toxins will never leave the blood. They'll stay in the blood. And eventually the body will go, we can't leave these toxins floating around in the blood. If the toxins stay in our blood, it causes all the problems. It causes brain fog, it causes headaches, irritability, mood problems, metabolism problems, acne, the whole list of all of our common symptoms will result if you are not properly eliminating your toxins. So we eliminate our toxins in the liver and the bowels. And if you're not peeing and pooping them out, they stay in circulation, and eventually they get stored back in the body's tissues, usually fat cells and the bone. So this is where supplements do come into play. And I have some cleanse products that I'll show you at the end. But you don't need the products to do a cleanse, as long as you're doing some of the support and just by avoiding the foods, that in and of itself is going to help the body with reducing the toxic load. You do not have to do supplements, and I just want to make sure that's really clear. But you can. You can bring in some teas. We talked about castor oil packs. The liver is the body's main detox organ, and I think of this as the gatekeeper for eliminating those toxins into the bowel or into the urine. Castor oil packs, so you take castor oil, you put it on a flannel cloth, you lie the flannel cloth onto the person's abdomen, and then you ideally put a hot pack on top of that, so you've got heat driving that castor oil on top of the liver. And it's doing two things. The castor oil in and of itself is actually an anti-inflammatory over the liver, and the heat is increasing circulation in the liver, which is going to increase function in the liver. So I recommend people do castor oil packs, I'd say 15 to 20 minutes, either every day or every other day through the duration of the cleanse. Here's instructions for the castor oil pack. And you can, again, we actually carry these products in the office. So if you need your flannel cloth or castor oil, you can pick that up from the office. And then your kidneys, we want to make sure you're peeing it out. So most important thing here, you're drinking enough water. However many pounds you weigh, divide that by 2. You should be drinking half of your body weight in ounces of water per day. Now that maxes out at about 100 ounces. You really shouldn't be drinking more than 100 ounces, and it doesn't matter how much you weigh. If you weigh 300 pounds, you should not be drinking 150 ounces of water. That's too much. So most people are in the needing, 60 to 80 or 90 ounces of water a day. If you're not pooping it out, you're reabsorbing it. So it is important that you're paying attention to your bowels here. So if you're not pooping, we need to, number one, figure out why is your sluggish digestion happening. Is this a thyroid problem, a water problem, a fiber problem? If the person is doing a detox, I will add a Band-Aid to help them go. We do not want them constipated during a cleanse or a detox. And so that's when I add things like prunes or another fiber supplement or magnesium. There's various types of magnesium. The one that helps the most with pooping is magnesium oxide. Magnesium citrate also will oftentimes help. Citrate is a more expensive form that helps also with brain and muscle function. Oxide is super cheap, and all it really does is help you poop. You do not absorb it into your bloodstream. It stays in your colon, it sucks in water, and it helps you poop. So just make sure that you've got good, healthy digestion during your cleanse. So again, the reason we would do a cleanse here is it helps with energy, mood, skin, concentration, liver function, metabolism, digestion, allergies. These are the 3 different cleanse kits I use. And I'm going to pop in the cleanse. In the chat section, I just gave you guys a link. That link will take you to FullScript, our online medicinary, and you can look at these cleanse kits there if you would like to purchase them. So these are all 14-day cleanse kits, and I either have people buy 1 or 2 and either do a 14-day or a 30-day cleanse. And then we customize the cleanse for them and do whatever else they're wanting to do with these things. We can schedule saunas, we can schedule IVs, we can schedule meditation, we can aim to reduce their caffeine intake. First, I really want people to kind of do a personal self-eval and think about, what am I getting exposed too much to? And what do I need more of? And how can I schedule and prioritize this in my life? And I think we're all entitled to prioritizing our health for 30 days, twice per year, where we kind of reset after the holidays and reset before we go into the fall, winter. So NutriClear is an option. The NutriClear is a pea-based protein. Now, some people do not tolerate pea. It can cause bloating, but most people actually do tolerate pea. And if they're wanting to avoid animal protein, then I use the NutriClear cleanse kits. And then the paleo cleanse kit, it's called paleo because this is an animal source of protein. It's hydrolyzed collagen. So it's hydrolyzed beef protein. And I realize that sounds really weird. There's a strawberry vanilla flavor, a chocolate flavor. So these actually taste pretty good. So hopefully that information will get you to the Cleanse products if you're interested in those. And there we go. I hope you guys have questions. And if you don't, then maybe that means I answered all of your questions along the way. So what questions do you guys have? I'm going to assume none if I haven't. I did actually have these to show you. So when you buy the Cleanse kits, they usually come with individually wrapped protein powder packets, and sometimes they also have supplement packets. So if I'm using a supplement during the cleanse, those are also usually individually wrapped. So it's nice. It makes it easy and convenient. And then, you're mixing these with water or nut milk or whatever you're doing for your liquid in the cleanse. So any other questions? You're very welcome, Bonnie. Thank you for coming. All righty, I'm going to assume that I answered all of your questions then. Thank you so much, everyone. Happy New Year. Cheers. If you're interested, at this point, enough. You could do the cleanse yourself. Go to Whole30, check them out. You can give them your email, and then they'll give you like the rules of the cleanse and what you do eat and what you don't eat. Otherwise, talk to your doctor and they can help you kind of customize this in more detail if you need help. But you should all be good to go on designing your own cleanse this time of year. I'm starting tomorrow. Tomorrow is my cleanse. So take care, everyone. Happy New Year. There was one last question. If you are still here, Marta, I will answer your question. So what is the best herbal tea to stimulate urination? Traditional medicinals makes a tea called detox tea, and Yogi Teas makes a tea called detox tea. Both of them are, I think, available at Sprouts. They're quite tasty, and I usually tell people to make a pot, 2 to 3 tea bags, and drink it throughout the day. 1 cup in the morning, 1 cup at lunch, 1 cup in the afternoon, or I tend to just kind of make a pot when I'm home and add the tea and then drink it, maybe add some water and just spread it out over the course of the day. So yeah, detox tea by either Yogi Teas or traditional medicinals. So there you go. Thanks for the question. Take care, everyone. Happy New Year.